Joe and Hadman, go and move up towards that bench and see what you can see for me, right?
The role of the 5th Battalion 60th in particular was, to quote Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, to be the eyes and ears of the army. They were out front, well in front of the line infantry and the light infantry as well, scouting ahead, acting as a reconnaissance and scouting force.
Eyes on, Sarge. Where front?
Well, the 5th Battalion of the 60th Royal American Regiment was formed by Act of Parliament in late December 1797. They were actually formed to sort of address the problem in the Americas originally, but they actually saw service in the Peninsular Wars. They were in Ireland very briefly during the late 1798 rebellion, but they actually ended up in Spain, Portugal and France for the whole duration of the Peninsular War. So the battalion was formed from 2 regiments, Lowenstein Chasseurs and Humpesch's Mounted Riflemen. They were German and Dutch men who formed the battalion.
And there was a strong belief in Britain that you wouldn't find locals, be they English, Scots, Welsh or Irish, who were capable of being marksmen, which is why, in forming the first fully armed rifle unit in the British Army, the army turned to men from Germany and Holland and the Low Countries and the Alpine areas, where in the woods and the mountains people hunted for sport or hunted professionally, quite a middle class thing to do, but they were marksmen, and there was a belief that they were the only people capable of doing that, which is why the 5th Battalion 60th Rifles was almost entirely formed, certainly amongst the other ranks, from people from those parts of the world. The British Army had been quite roughly handled in America by the marksmen, you know, the traditional woodsmen of the American frontier. And there was a lot of debate in the British Army at the time about the use of the rifle, because the smoothbore musket in use at the time only had really an effective range up to about 100 yards, and it was fired in large numbers to create that effect. Well, these riflemen were able to fire a shot much more accurately over a much longer distance, because the weapon they're using is rifled. It has a groove inside the barrel that spins the ball, and for the first time ever, if you can just borrow your rifle, the British Army was going to be equipped with a weapon that had sights. Move your unit here now and give me some rolling fire from that fence. Go. If you're in the line infantry, in the redcoats, in the standard line unit, you're in what's called close order. So Steve and I will now stand shoulder to shoulder, and we're almost touching. If you can imagine ranks of people like this, that's close order. The rifles and the light infantry fought in a much looser formation. They needed to cover ground. The accuracy of the rifle was now making up for the sort of mass impact of the musket. The greater range, the greater accuracy. So they could afford to go forward and extend. And what that means is, rather than being in close order like this, we start to go anything up, minimum is 2 paces apart, could be 4, 6, 8, 10 paces apart, and that's extended order. And men are fighting in pairs now, rather than in huge blocks of men. They're fighting in pairs. So these files of 2 men were the basic team unit of the rifle regiment. Centre, come on, let's move. Let's move. Present. You fire. Form chain order, and I want you to move in your directions. Form chain order. They have more battle honours from the Peninsular War than any other regiment. 15 battle honours were awarded to the 5th Battalion, the 60th Rifles, in the Peninsular War. And the 2 most decorated soldiers, that is, in the sense they were decorated, but later, after the war, medals were awarded with clasps. And the 2 men who had more clasps than any others were, by then, Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Pierre Galiffe and Private Danny Lukestad, are actually the 2 most decorated British soldiers from the Peninsular War, 1808 to 1814. Other units, such as the 95th, put it down there. are famous for writing their memoirs and were very, very popular in the early 19th century. It was a popular read. You know, it was the 19th century version of Bernard Cornwell was to pick up Kincaid and to read his memoirs of the Peninsular War. There's nothing of that for the 60th. There's nobody writing their memoirs. So they're kind of a forgotten elite, but they were an elite.